All right, everybody, welcome to tonight's episode of The Gathering. Tonight, we have a very special guest with us. We have Pat O'Keefe, who is a psychic medium. She is a very talented photographer. She is a certified consulting hypnotist. I always try to say that backwards. I don't know why I want to put the hypnotist first, but we'll talk a lot about that tonight. We're going to talk about past life regressions. We're going to talk a little bit about psychic mediumship. We're going to talk about something else. I don't remember. What was the other thing? Sorry. It's been kind of hectic. Sorry. What'd you say, Pat?
I said, we'll just let the conversation flow.
Absolutely. Well, everybody that's tuned in, thank you for tuning in. We're waiting on Rhonda. She's going to come on soon. We do have Christina and Michelle with us. Rhonda will be on in a little bit. So I think here comes Rhonda. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her on. There she is. Hey, Rhonda, we're already live.
I finally made it. Hey, Pat.
Hey, Rhonda, how are you?
Good. I love your hair. It looks great.
Well, thanks. I'm shocked how much light I have in it. So it's so real. And it's so weird. Underneath, it's still dark. It's just on top, of course, where everybody can see it.
It's beautiful.
All right. Well, I'm glad everybody is able to be here tonight. So, Pat, real quick, before we get into the show, I wanted to take a moment and thank you for the fabulous promotion pictures that you took for us. We are using them on our websites, our social media, and I'll go ahead and put some of these up because anybody that can make this group look as good as you made us look is a testament to a talented photographer. Okay, because I mean, you know, this is a lot that you had to try and fix here, but you did a fantastic work, and they just love the shots. So I'm gonna put this one up first. This is the one that we're using a lot as our main team photo. And I mean, it's a fabulous photo. You captured everybody's, not only their expressions, but you actually got just the mood that we were going for. And it's phenomenal. And I want to talk a little bit about that one because that photo actually was used a couple of months ago. Our team was lucky enough to make the cover of Paranormal Underground. And Pat, that was your photo that we submitted for the cover, and they loved it. So fantastic work.
I'm extremely excited to see that, and it was really easy photographing you guys. I think the greatest compliment that a photographer can get is that they've captured the essence or the soul of a moment, and you guys are a real class act, and so I was wanting to get that. I mean, wanting to get that moment, and I think we worked together and we got it.
Well, and not only did you get that one, but you got us so many photos. It was really hard for us to pick the one we wanted to use as our primary photo. So I've got two more I'm going to share real quick just because I want to take an opportunity to brag on your talents. This is another one that you wanted to do. And I had never seen this type of shot, and I didn't really know what it was going to look like. But when it came out of camera and then you sent it to us, I was blown away by it. And we've not used it for anything yet because we haven't found that special moment to use it, but it's this photo here.
Oh, yeah. I love that. That's kind of got that True Blood feel to it, a mystery, and well, it's just kind of a mystery. If I were to give that a zodiac sign, that would be a Scorpio. Very dark and mysterious.
I love it. And then the one we're using for our promotional banner that's actually going to be when we go to events and do live or do publics is this one right here. It was another shot that you felt like this was a good way to put us all together and kind of just capture who we are. And again, you did that. So I know that wasn't the focus of tonight's episode and what we were going to plan on really talking about, but I just wanted to take a few minutes to thank you again for the phenomenal photos because, like I said, I mean, you made us look really good, and we really appreciate that. So, well, Pat,
I love doing it. I was going to say, if you have another need up the road, just let me know. We'll set something up and do another series.
Absolutely. And anybody that is local in this area, we are putting across your websites along the screen here. And that's the Haunted Photography website would be where they would go if they're interested in hiring you for photography work, Pat.
Okay, thank you.
So
The COVID's gone.
yes, of course. Yeah, that's the thing. That's been craziness that we're all trying to deal with. But before we get started, or we get ready to get started, Pat, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your background and what it is that you do and what your expertises are, and then we'll just see where the conversation takes us tonight.
You mentioned that I'm a psychic medium. I am an ascendant side Scorpio. So from the get-go, I've been fascinated by the paranormal and never really feared the darkness, if you will. Not that, I mean, I'm very much of a light worker. Don't get me wrong, but even, light workers have to understand the grays and the darks so that you can work against it, so to speak. From the time I was a child, I've had experiences, and it's kind of led me down this path of being a light worker reader, and that's part of what I do. I am a medium as well as a psychic, and Rhonda knows all about those sorts of talents or gifts, and it carries a lot of weight, does it not, Rhonda? It's not something. I mean, when you see the some of these shows, it looks so light, and it's not. It's very much an important job that someone like Rhonda or I do. And Rhonda, go ahead. You were going to mention something.
No, you're absolutely right. It is not. It is not an easy task. It's not. Ooh, it's all fun and games. It's a heavy burden to carry.
It is. Recently, I was working on a missing persons case, and I had the feeling of like blowing my brains out.
Wow.
I got hit on this side of my head and went straight out, and it was so bad, such an impact that I actually had to go to the emergency room. And I think one of the things that people like us have trouble with is telling someone that their loved one is across the veil. And I have to get past that. I mean, that is something that I struggle with all the time. Because it's very difficult, to tell someone that their loved one is across the veil, that you've just felt them in their life, you know how it happened. And it can be kind of a heavy burden. You do this because it's a path.
It's something you're really called to, right? I mean, for you guys that have those gifts, it's something that you're really drawn to, you're called to. And I think you brought up something really interesting. I don't think people think about the burden that you all carry. And I know for us, having worked so closely with Rhonda and Nikita, we see that, we see the impact that has on them and what investigations and what we do takes on them and how it does drain them and impact them. So it's kind of our job as being there with them we think to kind of guide that and pull them back when they go too far or we think they need to be pulled back a little bit. So I think you brought up something that I think people don't really think about and the toll that it takes on you guys. While you guys start talking about that, I'm going to pop up comments as they come through. And here's one that just came in that I thought Pat would like to see.
Oh, that's Lori. She's an amazing person. I'm actually working with her on a special project where I am actually channeling someone from from one of her past lives, and she's using that information. She's using that information in a very creative way. That's why I actually got into past life regression hypnosis, or as we call it, recovered memories. Hypnosis is because one of the gifts that I have is to be able to look at someone and I can tell someone's past lives. Rhonda's shaking her head because the first time I ever saw Rhonda, I said to her, "Do you feel an affinity with the 1920s?" Because I saw her and she was like dripping in pearls. Pearls were so big at that point, and just she had perfume, and I mean, she was just beautiful, but she was definitely a 1920s babe. And she actually did a regression with someone, and that was a lifetime that came forward
Wow.
for her. So it's very meaningful lifetime to her. I've had some interesting past life experiences as far as talking with people. One was a gentleman that came to me. I'll never forget this, and he leaned forward and he said, "I'm impotent." I know. It's like I tell people that psychics and mediums get more information from people. I mean, it's just like we are, we are spiritual counselors in a very real way. So he leans over and he says that, and the moment he said it, it was like boom. I was in like the probably 60s to 1880s, in that era. It was the gaslight era, and I knew it was either. I figured it was London. I really did, because he had the Bobby outfit on. He looked different, but his energy was him. It was the same person. And so he started flapping around the hoes, the prostitutes, right? And being mean, I could feel the anger, because I live sometimes their, energy, their emotions. And so he's really angry. He thinks that they're, inferior to him and not worth life and breath. And so he's slapping them around. I mean, he's just horrible. And I'm like, back to my body in the now. And I looked at him and I said, I bet you watch every detective show on television. And he said, "Oh, yeah, I do. Everyone, yeah. He's all getting animated, because it's a free flow of energy, if you will, between the psychic medium and the person that you're working with. You're exchanging energy. And I said, I bet that you have a rather large gun collection. I mean, I was just because it's who he was,
Right.
is the person he is now, right? And
So,
I told him, I said, listen, I said, this is karmic. I said, in your last lifetime, I said, whoops, do I still have you guys?
you do.
Yes.
In your last lifetime, I said, you hated hoes. I said, you were a cop and you were mean. And I said, so guess what hoes sell? In this lifetime, you're not getting any.
So karma exchange, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about there. It's, it's come back full circle, right? Kind of karmatic exchange.
There's a saying, a lot of people, when you say, I hope karma gets you, it's like this curse. But karma, in the pure sense, there's a saying that today the frog eats the worm. Tomorrow the worm eats the frog. It's full circle, like you said.
Right.
And what you put out, you get. There's a past life story, true story. This gentleman came back, and of course, as a child, he had he had knowledge of his prior life and his prior village. When he was 4 years old, he went trotting to the village, found his house, and talked to the widow. Well, the person that had killed him told everybody that it was basically an accident, but it wasn't an accident. According to the child, he murdered him out of rage. They had gotten into an altercation with the fact that I think a cow was in someone's field that shouldn't have been there. Okay. Well, as this child grew up, he stayed in touch with his widow and his grown children. They were adults. And when he would see this man, when he would visit, he would chuck stones at him. And they asked him, why didn't you feel the need to do more? He said, no. He said, if I would take this man's life, then it would perpetuate another lifetime of murder. And he said, we have had that before. He was trying to get ahead of that, trying to prevent that.
So trying to break that cycle, right? In a sense?
He was trying to break the cycle. We have choices in this lifetime that we make where we can break very negative cycles that we find ourselves in, time and time again.
So is
And
that
I'm,
so is that part of, and I know it depends on belief systems, but is that part of, as we come through this life, we have paths that are presented and we follow these paths. Sometimes they say we're doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past, but I guess what you're saying is we have these choices. And as we
yes,
consciously evolve and as we bring ourselves to the next level and the higher levels, we have the opportunity to start changing that cycle and refining that till we reach that higher level. Is that, it's a real crude way of saying it, but is that kind of what you're talking about?
yes, yes. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Eventually, we find nirvana, and the definition of nirvana is nothingness, but it's everything. What happens is we oscillate at such a high vibration that we become cleansed and cleared of all of the baggage that we drug with us through the lifetimes, and we reconnect with God, the universal one, forever. So we cease being the individual and become
Part of the
nothing there.
collective, so to speak.
So we are more than the collective. We are now the spark, that God spark is now back. You see what I'm saying? We're
Yes.
everything. I don't think of it in Borg terms. When I think of the collective, I think of the Borg.
Well, yeah. I didn't even think about that when I said that, but yes, it's very true for the sci-fi fans out there.
It's more of the spark of you are the spark of God. You are reconnected you know, with the universal one. And you're right. It depends on paths for people who are follow a Christian path. I mean, there is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you were an ancient, it lived in ancient Egypt, you would have been working very hard. Their belief was that Anubis stood and he held a weigher. I'm sorry, the Libra.
Scale.
Thank you. The scale, and your soul basically was put on that scale, and at the other part of the scale, the other part of the weighing scale, was a feather. To get to the other world, your soul had to be
Wow.
light or equal to
Lighter
that
than a
feather.
feather.
So do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I mean, we carry baggage with
Right.
us, whether we believe we come around again or whether we believe we go into whatever afterlife that we feel our path will lead us to.
So how did you get, have you always been fascinated with past lives, or is it just where you've always kind of seen that in other people? How did you kind of find your path to each of these different things? When did you realize that which gifts were the ones you needed to were really the ones you needed to follow?
Um, um, uh, well, I mean, it all my life really has been a path. When I was 13 years old, I was reading because, and don't get me wrong out there, people, I am very much a light worker. But when I was 13, I was reading things like Richard Cavendish's The Dark Arts. I was reading, The Wonders of the World. I was reading about Tibetan mysticism. I was reading about Hinduism. I had a thirst and wanted to know God at a very early age, and took that path. And but look, I am far from perfect. I got off that path, wandered back on and off, and as we all can do. It's called life, right?
It's a
And I
journey,
have
right?
many more lifetimes to go before I hit that lifetime that is right before Nirvana. I know that. So yeah, but I will tell you that yes, I've always been able to connect with discarnate spirits or spirit energy. And my first memory, I was in Fairbanks, Alaska, and my father was in the Air Force, and my mother, of course, was with me at the house, and my sister. And it was the twilight time of the year. It's Alaska, so it's like twilight all the time, right? So I'm sitting up in bed, and my mom had a nightlight, and I'm sitting there. I'm like 3.5, 4 years old, and I see my mom float into the room. I'm like, you know, I'm 4. I'm trying to figure this out how I could have two moms. and I saw her float into the room, and then I just see her lay down in her body. Well, obviously it was her astral projection. I saw her soul, come into the room and re-enter her body. And I come from a family of astral projectors, which makes sense. But so yeah, and I will be honest with you. I've been told by my spirit guides not to watch other people, not to look to the left or to the right, because it may confuse me that I'm only to follow the path that I have been given. If that makes sense.
Yes.
So I don't try to do anything. Does that make sense? I don't try to find the thing that fits me,
right.
Because if you follow your path, that will be given to you.
You'll follow what you're supposed to.
And Rhonda knows what. And Rhonda, you know this too, that other gifts open to you as you and I know this vibration thing drives people crazy because they don't understand it, but it really is. As you vibrate at a higher and higher level,
it's almost like an evolution.
It is absolutely, and it's one that I found that the best practitioners are the most giving of their talent, if you will. I really struggle, Ron, and you know this. I told you this. I struggled with even charging $20 for a meeting at public events. I struggle with that because I have been blessed in many ways. So I prayed and meditated for it was weeks. And then I got what we call an epiphany, right? It's like you are somewhere else. You're not in your body. And I'm in this swirling mist, and I see two energies come together. And one was weaker than the other one, right? And I see them intermix, and then I see them pull apart. And when they do, the one that was weaker was now stronger. It had more energy. And the one that was stronger was now weaker. And that was the spiritual message that it is about reciprocation. You've got to
give and take.
Give and take. But here's the thing. I saw when I was there, because I'm sitting there, I'm sorry, thinking, oh, wow, okay, I have a gift, woohoo, hey, I'm human. I told you I have lifetimes yet.
Right.
Then I was given this second vision attached to this. It was really kind of one ongoing. But I saw this portrait. It was on a stand of a very well-known psychic. And I saw her when she was young, and she was beautiful, and she had the white light around her. And then it was like the picture of Dorian Gray. It was like, OMG. As she got older and older, it became twisted, and the features started to melt. And that was the spiritual message. And I heard the voice, my spirit guide say, always give more than you take. And Rhonda knows that's what I live by. Always give more than you take. Because that way, not only do you guarantee you're not carrying extra karma, but you're paying off some karma in this lifetime also. So,
and I have to say that Pat she's my mentor. She's the one who helped me open up after so many years of being closed off. And it was like after I started working with Pat, that flower began to unfold. And then, like you said, Pat, I began working on a higher vibration, and the more I worked and evolved, the higher it became, and the more I evolved. And it's just like a cycle. But I have to say, Pat is wonderful, and if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be open like I am now, because I had completely closed off for years. But she saw it, and she helped me to open back up.
That is, I mean, I saw, she has, Rhonda has, she has it. She has the gift. And she was at a place where it was like, she really has so much power that she didn't need to start like a child, you know what I'm saying, opening the door and running out the door, going, wee, because all of them hit her at once because she's has so much energy that you're like a light. Once you light yourself, so to speak, once you allow that light in, you have to understand that you're also surrounded by darkness, and the things that are in the dark see that light. And so you need to be prepared. You need to have some time with your gift to learn it before you completely turn that light on. Because at that point, you have to be, knowledgeable about things like shielding and warding, understanding energy, because dark energy can guise itself as really light energy, but can only do it for a certain amount of time. A well-trained, if you will, psychic feels that energy right away, no matter what kind of sheep's clothing it
Facade,
tries to.
right?
And it's incredibly important to have that. But Rhonda, you're just off and running now. I mean, you're just opening up. I'm sure you're encountering more and more types of gifts that that are being presented to you, and you will through your lifetime. And it's an ebb and flow. You may become much more visual for a while, and then usually it's an ebb and flow, but you never lose it, if that makes sense. It's a combination.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, if it hadn't been for you, I probably would not have opened back up because I had been closed for so long. But there was just something about you, Pat. And I know that we knew each other in a past life. You said that, and I know we did back in the 20s. So I was like, you're to save me again.
It could have been my lifetime. One of the reasons I was interested in past memory, regression also, or recovery, was because of my own dreams. I have the same dream over and over and over, and it's the dream of my death in a past life. And Rhonda, I will let you know too that something that's interesting, people who remember past lives really are further along as far as the karmic cycle. You start remembering more of your own lives and delving deeper into that. It just all comes with that vibration level that, like you said, the evolution as we travel through our lives. Yeah.
So that kind of brings up I want to make a quick point before we talk about something you just said. This is why I think for a lot of the people that follow us and will watch this later on, are in paranormal. They do the paranormal thing like we do, but a lot of people don't really do embrace this side of it. They don't embrace, and I'm not saying that that's bad because each team has to follow their own path and their own way of doing things, and there's no right or wrong way. But I think what we've learned, at least me in my time as a paranormal investigator, tapping into that abilities that you guys bring to the table, people like you, Rhonda and Nikita, the stuff that brings to the table for us really elevates things, and it really changes the abilities for us to help people that are experiencing the paranormal phenomenon or to further the research that we're trying to research. And it's really fascinating to hear Rhonda's, I guess in a sense, her mentor on here telling us about Rhonda's path, because it's really interesting for us to hear that, at least it is for me, because it is true. I think, and I know I'm kind of jumping around, but I wanted to make that point to say this. I think it's true that as you meet people, you just know when they connect with you or they connect with you in a different way. And I think what I've learned in my time working with Rhonda, is that right there is that sometimes when we connect with these people, it may be for a different reason. It may be because we were connected before in past lives, or it may be because of where we're going in the current path that we're on. And I truly believe for our team that that's exactly what happened. We didn't come together by coincidence or accident. We're connected for a reason. And I felt that the very first time I ever met Rhonda, the very first time that we talked, I knew that she was going to be an important part of my journey. The same thing happened when we connected with Christina and Michelle and Al. And it's I don't know how to explain it other than it was like, this is it. These are the right people. These are the people I am meant to take this walk with.
It's it's interesting because in parts of Asia, they will actually mark the body of a deceased one, and they will look for that mark in children who come back into their family. And one of the reasons that they do it is that they can find their way back to the family, but also so that they can look at these marks. The University of Virginia, and by the way, Rhonda and I are both signed up. They do I don't want to say experiments on this, but they do scientific research on this, and so Rhonda and I have volunteered to be guinea pig at some point. But the University of Virginia has actually done some very serious work on reincarnation, and specifically, the marks. And they have found that, going into families that have reported this, and making notes or reports of these sorts of marks in people who come back. I'll be honest with you, I'm wondering if my grandchild is my mother. It's like she came, this child, Ronnie, you know this. She sits like my mother. Have you ever seen photographs of a little Vietnamese woman who squats? She squats just like my mother did. My
Oh,
mother did
wow.
because she had COPD, and it's the only way that she could breathe, and so that,
Sure.
comfortably. So she would actually and do it for hours. How she did it, I don't know, but she would do it for hours. So does my granddaughter. My granddaughter will not wear shoes. My mother hated shoes. She prefers her daddy. My mother loved her daddy. I mean, it's just like I'm looking at this already, and I'm cocking an eyebrow, wondering, if my mother has returned in my grandchild. And it does happen. A woman had a little boy, and she was going to punish him, as in a little, corporal punishment. And he looked at her and he said, "You were awful a lot when you were a child, but I never whipped you."
Wow.
And then went on to talk about his past life as her father. So yes, there's so many reports. Google past life stories. You will be really amazed at the stories that come out of this.
So for people that may watch this or that are watching now, so that may not understand past lives, and of course I really don't know a whole lot about it. I'm learning as I'm going down this path and meeting people such as yourself, and then you'll mention something, and then I love to research. So guess what I'll be Googling over the next few days. That's just how my mind works. I crave knowledge and researching. That's
Oh
just
yeah.
what I love to do. But what I was going to say, so what you're saying is when you come back, you may not necessarily be a man this time. Next time you
No.
might be a woman. Next time you might be, you could be anybody that was in that cycle, right? I mean, there's not necessarily going to be exactly the same as you are now. It's not like I was always a different version of Matt. I could have been my soul, yes, but I mean, I'm not physically a male every single time,
No.
right?
One of the things that I'm sure you've heard of the sleeping prophet of Virginia Beach, Edgar Casey, who was the most famous psychic of the last century. Um, he was just shocked. He was very fundamentally religious. And when he was called to service, so to speak, and he started hearing, his spirit guide speak to him, he was given that information, and that just shook him to the core. That we are both male and female, that basically the soul has no sex. Let's think
Right,
about that. Makes sense, doesn't it? But here's the thing that he was told, and that is that we learn we have lessons to learn, and we will be in, say, the body of a female, and we will stay the course until we learn those lessons, or until we become so feminine that we have nothing else to
to
learn in
learn.
that in the feminine form. And so it is now our turn to learn as, in the male form. And, this really does explain a lot of things when you think about it. I'll tell you something recently. When I was actually getting my certification in hypnosis, there was a woman, and she was on the Enneagram, she would be an 8. She's the challenger. She's the leader. She's the yeah, you know what I'm saying, that kind of energy. And so she was giving me down the road. I mean, I thought so. And I'm like, ooh, she's mean. I'm avoiding her. But anyway, at the end of it, she said, I'm going to read him. And I'm like, I don't think I'm the best psychic, for you. I said, maybe you want another psychic. No, I want it from you. I'm like, okay. So I start the reading, and I hear, and I can't remember, I hear foreign languages. And so what I do is I write it down sometimes, and then I have to look it up, right? But when I was looking at her, because once she said that, then what I'll do is I'll focus. When somebody gives me permission, you don't have to be in the room. You can be anywhere in the world. I literally have clients as far away as New Zealand. But I look and I start to focus. Well, I see the First World War. I know it's the First World War because of the garb that he has on. It's her, but it's he, right?
Right.
And I'm like, oh, that makes sense with all the leadership, energy and the very
Structure,
male.
militant, yes.
Yeah. So I'm like, this is interesting. And then I said, take me to where she died. And all of a sudden, I'm in this clearing, and I'm seeing like mounds where they've got foxholes, right? And I see her running, he running, and he throws himself over the foxhole. And when he lands, he's looking right. I mean, this is a horror show. It is a horror show. This guy is just, half of his face is gone. He looks over, and there's a man, and he's got this stare. I mean, there's no life in his eye. He's alive, but he's shell shocked. And so that was the moment of her death. I felt that at that moment she died. Something happened, that she died inside that foxhole. Well, I'm like, how do I tell this woman that she already doesn't like me, right? So I'm sitting there, and I told her, I said, in your last lifetime, I said, you were a man. I said, and we carry a lot of those. I'm trying to be very diplomatic.
Right.
We carry a lot of those traits over into this lifetime. She looked at me and she said, oh, honey, that makes sense. I was married to a woman for 12 years. I was like, okay. But it gets better. This is, and we'll talk about the Cassandra Effect when you want to. This is part of that. And Rhonda knows it. The delivery of bad news. So I'm looking at her, and she asked about her partner, who's a man, now. And I'm looking at her, and I said, he's having an affair with someone. So you have to be careful, because you don't want him to show up on your doorstep, right, Rhonda?
I can imagine, yeah.
Do not tell them. Okay. So yeah. So I tell her, I said, listen, he's having an affair. And I love it, because she's constantly trying to trip me up. Rhonda knows her types. She can't help herself, right? This is just who she is. And I said, no, he's having an emotional affair, because all I'm seeing is this. Watch, oh, sorry. The on the
texting.
Phone. I keep seeing him on the phone. And so she said, well, that makes sense, because he's impotent, right? So anyway, I'm like, you're trying to trip me. Why are you doing this? But anyway, I said, well, I said, I'm sorry. I'm just letting you know. So she said, well, I knew something was wrong. So she goes home, and then she writes me. She said, I confronted him, and she said, and you were right, Pat. She said, he's having an emotional affair. So she took her life in a different direction. Spirit doesn't tell you information through someone like me or Rhonda to hurt you. Spirit is telling you to help you. for her, this was a no-win. This was a loveless relationship. He had moved on emotionally because that's all he had to give, and so
There
that
was no
was
going back.
no, it was devastating to her in the short time, right? But in a very short while, like weeks, she wrote me back, and I mean, it changed her life for the better. She
Right.
had relieved herself from that. So, you have to keep that in mind. And people like Rhonda and I, psychics and mediums, we get bad reputations as being harbingers of doom. No, we are not. We are just telling you what's going on, right? We didn't make it happen. So, yeah.
So as far as like past life regression, and this is just something that just kind of popped in my head, how far back are you able to go? I mean, does it depend on the person that you're regressing? Are there other factors, or how does that kind of work? And then we'll talk to Christina and Rhonda both about this, because you both have had regressions done, correct? So if
Yes.
you guys
Yeah.
are willing to talk about that, we may get into that a little bit if you want to. But for Pat, how does that work? I mean, how far back can you go, and what are the limitations?
Well, there's different types of hypnosis. Let me put that on the table first. I was trained through the National Guild of Hypnotists. So, we do everything from hypnosis to help you get over a bad habit like smoking or biting your nails, or I'll tell you, we had someone in my class, and it was interesting. He was a surgeon, and he actually took it so he could hypnotize his family, like his children and his wife, to help them, which I thought was really, really nice. Plus, he was a dental surgeon, and he wanted to be able to hypnotize his patients so he wouldn't have to give them as much medication, which is safer for them. So so there's different reasons that we all go into this, but I'm kind of digressing. Where were we? Did I mention I have ADD? I do.
No, I was just curious. I was
Where were we?
I was just curious about what the limitations were as far as how far back can someone go. Like if I went to you for a regression, what would be I guess the expectations and limitations?
Okay.
Maybe that's a better way to put it.
The way that I was trained, and also the fact of who I am, I'm an energy worker. That's what I deal with is energy. Rhonda has been my guru, and as far as Reiki energy,
I forgot to mention you were a Reiki practitioner, almost a master. I do apologize. I did forget to mention that.
Almost. As soon as this COVID's over, Rhonda, we'll have to do this. Oh, no.
And Christina and I can both attest to how great of a teacher she is. I'm only done Reiki 1 with her, but she is a fantastic teacher in all of these things. So we are all students of Rhonda in that sense.
She is, absolutely, and feel totally grateful to be able to take this through her and with her, simply because I feel that you're kind of tied to the master's energy in a way. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So I love that. But yes, so I've always worked with energy, but working with Rhonda through Reiki, it's a much more systematic look at energy rather than just haphazard. And so through that, I was able to learn that. If you were to go with someone like me, who, as I said, is an energy worker and also, a certified hypnotist, I would take you back as far as your energy could go. When I feel you beginning to wane energetically, it could be 1, 2, 3, 4 lifetimes. Then I will bring you back. But I am working with you on an energetic level too. My energy is literally pushing into yours to make sure that you stay as safe as possible, that you're getting, the energy that you need to make the connections that you need while you're in that state. So I go back as far as I feel that you are able to. So it will depend on the individual. Now, if I were to practice QHHT, which is quantum, oh my gosh, I'm terrible. it's basically quantum healing, something therapy. That's pretty amazing stuff. Now they're doing it from a different direction. I mean, you don't have a psychic who's pushing energy and you're coming together in a very real sense. I often see what my client is seeing. Then you could be laying there for 3 hours. Mine usually lasts around 2 hours. That's what we did about 2. So yeah, 2, 3 is very rare for me. People, energetically start to get a bit tired around that
Sure.
point and pushing, just wanting to make sure that they have as pleasant and productive a travel, if you will, as possible, regression. And but if you're in QHHT, it could be hours. I mean, hours, 5 and 6 hours. For those that go really, really far back. I prefer to, because it could be the way that I'm trained. It could be, just the way that I practice this. I prefer to do something like that in stages. So we spend quite a bit of time, don't we, at any one lifetime, so that they can really experience the moments that they need to experience from that lifetime and take as many memories of that lifetime back with them. And it's so healing. Believe it or not, the gentleman that I told you about earlier that said he was impotent, whenever I told him why and that he could stop the cycle, he literally jumped up. This is in the middle of a conference in Lexington, Kentucky. He jumps up. No, I was in Atlanta, Georgia, and says, "Oh my God, she's awesome. Do you know she's awesome?" He was talking to my husband. I mean, because the light went on for him that he could prevent himself from going back and doing this again. And it would happen to him if he practiced the same type of behavior. And he had a lot of rage in him for women because I feel these things. Um, and, uh, and so he chose to let go of that, which I was really happy to see. What I'm saying is he was healed by this. And that's one of the things that I find really fascinating is the healing that occurs when you're able to understand why something has happened. I did a past life. Actually, it was before I was doing certified hypnosis, but I actually did it over the phone, and she had a fear of swimming, of water. Basically, she was uncomfortable around water, did not like water, etc. And I mean, I got the 360. And I said, "Oh my gosh." I said, "You were in World War II." And I saw her putting up cans, right? And I said, "You were a nurse, but you were helping with the war effort." And I said, "You were on a ship and you she died she died so fast. But I felt that she was at the lower, part of the ship, that she might have been in her berth or down under, the lower part of the ship when it happened." Well, I got her name through, just connecting with her. And so the Brits, she was British because I heard a British accent, an English accent. And the Brits are brilliant at keeping records of everything. So
Right.
I went back to the records of the dead, found that woman's name.
Oh, wow.
She was on a medical ship. She was, I forget, I think it was either the Sea of Japan or the South China Sea, one of them. It had, because I said it's Oriental seeds. And then I said, "But you died within like minutes." It was like, bam. That ship went down in 5 minutes because it was torpedoed. I mean,
Oh, wow.
but when I went back, when I was able to confirm this and show this to her, she told me later, she said, "It's the weirdest thing." She said, "I'm not uncomfortable around water anymore." You see what I'm
Wow.
saying?
Right. So that was that baggage we talked about earlier. That was something she was carrying with her, possibly, that was hanging on, that she needed to work through, right?
Absolutely. I mean, many of us have phobias that we don't understand where they came from. And it very well, it could be something that can be resolved through memory regression or memory recovery.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. So, Christina or Rhonda, do either of you guys want to talk about your experience that you had during your regressions? Are you comfortable talking about that? If you're not, we can talk about something else.
No, I'm fine to do it. I went in not really knowing what to expect. I trusted Pat immensely, of course, otherwise I wouldn't have even asked her about doing it. And I did not, when you think about hypnotism, you think about not really being in control of yourself and, all the stuff that you see on TV. It was nothing like that. I was fully aware of what was going on and fully in control, but she was able to guide me to be able to open up and help me experience these things. We've talked about people being in our paths over and over and over again. And I have a question on that, Pat, so don't let me forget. But went back through, well, I think we determined the earliest was somewhere in the 1600s. But I saw colors and I felt things happen physically. I could smell the foods cooking. I could smell fires burning. I could touch the cold stones. Until you've done it, you just cannot explain it. It's, I don't even know if I've had a chance to talk to you about it. It's life-changing. It really, really is. And while I'm on that, I've got to go ahead and ask you, Pat, people that keep coming back in our lives, is it because we still have work to do with them, or because we're tied together in some way? Why does that keep occurring?
We call, and of course, I wish I had all the answers to my knowledge, to my experience. We call these soul groups. And I think truly that we start, together, and that we reconnect. Now, that doesn't mean that in every lifetime you will reconnect with everyone. I had a woman once, and I looked at her, and I saw a small child, a girl, and I said, "Oh my gosh!" I said, "You're missing a little girl in this lifetime." And she started crying, and she said, "I look for her all the time." She said, "I don't know why. I don't." And I told her, I said, "Because she's part of your soul group." You know what I'm saying? She was one of those people who had a very high vibration, and so she was aware that this small child was not in her life during this lifetime. And I have one of my clients right now who has someone who's not in this lifetime, and she misses him dearly. So yeah, I think there's something about vibration, and I will tell you something that the mystics say, that the outside changes, but you will know. And remember, Matt, when you said you looked at Rhonda and you knew, that's because you looked her in the eyes. The energy, the soul of who we are is in it is seen through the window of the eye. And that's when you make that soul connection. So you don't need, it's not about the body, it's about the soul. And that's what you saw. You guys saw each other in a very, spiritual soul level. And that's when you recognize each other. So yes, we trip over each other all the time. And, in the back of your mind, you may miss a person who's not even, and has not been in this lifetime. You may be, at a higher vibration and realize that you are missing that soul, or you may not. It may kind of be, in the back of the mind. But yes, so we travel together as a soul group. And I will tell you something, this is interesting. The Kabbalah talks about reincarnation. And so we have a sect of Judaism, Judaism, that does believe in reincarnation. And their belief is that there were so many Jewish souls that were murdered during the Second World War that they became lost among nations when they were reincarnated. And
Wow.
I think my daughter Stephanie, in fact, one of the criteria that they look at whenever someone wants to become a Jew, and go through their, their equivalent of acceptance, you have to ask 3 times. 3 times. And the reason is, number one, you have to show that you truly are dedicated to, to changing your religion into Judaism. And also, one of the questions is, why would you want to become part of a people that are so disparaged and so,
Yeah.
abused down through the centuries? So you have to show that you truly, truly want to do this. But they also say that if you are drawn to Judaism, it's because you were a Gentile soul or a Jewish soul that was lost among nations, and now you are coming home.
Coming
You
home.
see?
Yeah.
Now that's the sect of them. Yeah, interesting.
Wow. So to Christina's point, it's these groups of souls sometimes are together, and sometimes we don't have all those components. So that might be missing in one lifetime. But there could still be, in a sense, maybe there's a reason maybe these souls are back together, or it's just a natural progression of the way that it just happens.
That's a good question, Matt.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw a big question out there. It's how my mind is.
I'm going to ask about that one. Yeah, because see, I meditate, and so I think about these issues all the time. And I've often thought, okay, so you get a soul like say Rhonda's, and she's opened up in this lifetime, and she's oscillating away. That vibration is just hitting high, and she's going up, so to speak. Okay.
Right.
Well, is she leaving the rest of the soul group behind? She may well be. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
I don't know. I wish
Right.
I had that. That's definitely something I'd like to meditate on. And
Or here's another question that my mind goes to with that. Or if, like we talked about earlier, if you have choices along the way, if you don't make a choice that the rest of the soul group that you're with does, maybe that's another reason you don't get to go along. Because if maybe you have to go back a step, in a sense. That might be a bad way to say it, but I think you know what I'm kind of trying to say.
Yeah, I don't think you go back. I think you get left behind. I mean, and like I said, I've thought about this issue before, because what do you do with the Buddha, who gave up being a prince and hit the bricks, right?
Right.
To bring enlightenment to the people. And what about his soul group? Well, I'd say he probably left
Good chance, right?
but I think he probably found nirvana in that lifetime, so it wouldn't matter. So excellent question. I mean, and that's the kind of thing that I meditate on all the time, because there's so many questions.
So before, I know, Rhonda, you've got a kind of a real limited time frame tonight, but before you have to go, one topic I wanted to touch on while you were on with us, and then if you have time, Pat, I would like to get into the Cassandra Effect if you have a few moments afterwards, if you still have some time, because I think this is fascinating conversation, and I'm truly enjoying it. But Rhonda, one of the things that you really have taught myself and the rest of the team is getting into the spiritualist methods and using, when I said it, the Victorian Era Methods, and using those things like the seances and the spirit boards and the dowsing rods and the tools from that Victorian period. And I know that's something that, Pat, you also that you do. So I wanted you guys to talk a little bit about maybe the spiritualist movement itself and about those tools and how we use those tools, and just kind of get into that conversation a little bit. Whichever one of you guys want to start.
Okay. Well, my grandmother actually passed some of this down to me. But the first seance I ever sat in on was with Pat. So it was an experience. It was not at all what I was expecting. You think the psychic's her eyes are gonna roll back in her head. Somebody else is gonna be talking for her.
And ectoplasm is going to fly across the room.
It does get animated sometimes, but yeah, that never happened. But it was a time where people were, I guess, they were getting in touch with the afterlife. There was more there. They knew there was more there, and this whole movement came about to learn more. And then all the psychics were around, and Houdini was a big part of that. Wanting to know if there was life after death, and
so I guess where I'm kind of going with why I think this kind of ties together. I think we're having another movement of that sense again in this time, in this era. I feel like a lot of us are getting drawn to that. Are we getting drawn to that, or are we just reconnecting because soul groups, right? Maybe the same soul groups have come back around that were here in that same period. Pat, I don't know. Am I way out there on this or not? And maybe that's why we're having that movement again, because I think those people were reaching out to that for a reason, much the way we are today. And I think there's a connection there personally. I personally feel like there could be.
I agree with you, Matt. During the Victorian era, there was so many deaths. People were dying like flies. Like if you lived in the ghetto of Liverpool, England, the average age was 15 at death, because a mother who would have 10 children could expect to bury most of them. I think it was like 6 or 7 by the time they were 5 years old. So the death rate was astronomical. And because, I mean, there was little food, there was little heat. The work that these people did was grueling in order to make a living. And so death was very common. And even rich people, the reason people had country houses was to get the heck out of Dodge during the winter or summer, I'm sorry, when things were so bad, because, I mean, people were just throwing their pots, their chili pots out the window. I forget the word that they would use in Ireland, but they have this word and they just dump it. So you had this seething disease-ridden city, and they would leave town, and that's when the Queen would go to Balmoral, and still does in August. But now we have fear, period, don't we, Rhonda? Yeah. I mean, it's resonating, fear of COVID, fear of what the future brings, fear of technology. I mean, good grief, y'all have seen what they're doing with robots right now. And you know what's really fascinating about that is they're more worried about putting out sex robots than they are worried about putting out a robot who will mop your floor. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I would buy a
we need one to vacuum and mop, right?
So we have all of this fear, and then like the Victorians, who were dropping like flies. There was what was it, 1918? Was it 1914 to 1918? 1914 to 1918, right? Any history buffs for the First World War? So right after that, we had more death, and then right now, we're on the verge of whatever. I mean, we're constantly worried about wars and wars. So there's all this fear, and now and people are living through their phones and through their computer screens, and it's
I have no idea what you're talking about. What are you talking about?
Well, and I think society as a whole is also elevating in a different way too, because technology does bring that. It brings more knowledge. We have knowledge is at our fingertips, far be it good and bad knowledge. But if you want to take the time to learn something, all you have to do is look at it. I mean, literally pick up your phone and you can go to Google and start finding sources of information, which that's a double-edged sword, right? I mean, it makes us dumb in some ways, but it also gives us access to knowledge we never had before.
There's a difference between being able to Google a fact and having the ability to critically think
Exactly.
for yourself. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? I mean, and you know, it just it really makes me sad when I see a bunch of people without masks on and
Yes.
without social distancing, demanding to have their freedoms. And I have no trouble with that because, you know, we're not going to be able to stay inside forever.
Right.
And this happens, by the way, Rhonda, if you're having a real reaction to this like I am, I mean, I haven't slept. It's because we went through this in 1918.
Yeah.
The flu.
Yeah. It's
Spanish
like
flu.
deja vu.
The Spanish flu, I'm telling you, they also called it the blue flu or the black flu. I can't remember anyway, because you could literally turn black by the end of the day because you were out of oxygen. But it was a pandemic, killed between 50 and 100 million people. And I told Ken when this started, I said, "Holy Hannah!" I said, "You know, I lived through this once." I knew I was going to be doing this again. You know? Here we are. So yeah, it's
You were prepared this time, though, weren't you?
Do what?
You were prepared this time, right?
Yeah, we were. I have.
But the kind of point where
Cassandra Effect. Yeah.
Yeah, but the point that I was kind of trying to kind of bring here was that I think that that movement is happening again for whatever reason. I feel like people are trying much more to understand what happens when we leave this physical world. It's becoming more and more mainstream.
Seriously, fear of when okay, think about it. We have a society that hides death. We don't know it. It is a stranger. At least in the Victorian era, you would put the coffin on a couple of sawhorses in the living room.
That's true.
When I was growing up, that's what we did in West Virginia. I'll never forget Uncle Fred. You know, we had Uncle Fred's box up on 2 sawhorses, and all the kids were daring everybody to touch Fred. But guess who did it? Yeah, this girl. I got street cred that day.
But that was different though, because I mean, even back you think like the late 1800s. I mean, you would actually pose for photos with your dead relatives. That was a common thing. That was what you did. You took. They called them something. What they called them?
Postmortem.
Postmortem photography.
Yes, exactly. And that was a thing, right? I mean, it was much more. I don't know. It was much more. I guess more connected. They had more of a sense of it, I think, than we do.
Because you would wash your relative's body, you would prepare that person for their final resting. You would have 3 days of, 3 days and 3 nights of mourning, and that's when you would have your wake. People would gather around, they would sit with the dead, and yes, it was intimate. You see what I'm saying? You were intimately connected to the complete cycle of life from birth to death. Here's what we do now. Hospitals hide their dead. You've never seen this corpse being drugged down the hall. No, they wait into the wee hours of the night.
Yeah.
And then, now listen, if you ever walk past something called the holding room, that's the morgue at your local hospital.
Yeah.
Who do we admire? We admire 14-year-olds and then people who desperately try to retain that physique and that face of a 14-year-old. I mean, anything that starts to decay, an old person, a building, anything that has some age and some history, it's like as a society, we want to eradicate it. And you were mentioning, technology. It's another evolution. Sometimes evolutions might not be in the best interest.
In the best way,
but
right?
It's something you cannot stop. You see what I'm saying? It truly is an evolution.
That's why I kind of say it's kind of a double-edged sword. But I know Rhonda's about out of time. Rhonda, I want to thank you for coming on tonight with us. It was great to have you on here. Be careful traveling back, and hopefully this COVID will pass soon, and we get back to our research and all the stuff that we've got planned, because we've got some big stuff we got to get to as a group. So we look forward to your return and COVID passing.
Yes, thank you. And I look forward to getting going over so that we can get back into the groove, because I miss you guys and I miss us getting together
Same
and being able to do things. So, and Pat, I miss you, and I can't wait till we can finish the Reiki classes. So,
Me too, Rhonda. And thank you for everything. I truly appreciate it.
no, I
I mean,
appreciate you. Like I said, you started me on this path again. If it wasn't for that, I'd still be sitting there spinning my wheels, wondering what was wrong with me. Thanks, Matt, Christina, Michelle. I'll see you guys later. Thanks,
All right.
Pat.
Take care. Be careful, Rhonda. We'll talk to you soon. I'll get Rhonda off here. Hang on one second. There she goes. All right. So, Pat, do you have a few more minutes to talk about the Cassandra Effect for just a few minutes, or do you need to go too?
No, I've got a couple minutes, and then you can wrap it up if you wish. I'm ready.
Sure. All right. So tell us about that. That's something I knew very little bit about. I know you and I talked about it via text a little bit. So it's fascinating. I think it's something that people would really be interested in hearing about.
Well, Cassandra was she was a Greek, and she was given the gift of second sight by Apollo, and she managed to irritate him. And so what happened is that he cursed her. He didn't take the gift that he had given her, which was the gift of second sight, but he added to it that no one would believe her. So
Wow.
so here we had someone who was gifted and would tell people what was to happen and was trying to save people, but no one would listen to her or believe her. And so it's really, it's really a type of curse, and it's something that happens with all seers, that sometimes you tell something and they don't want to believe it.
So I know that this happens, and I don't obviously have any gifts like you all do, but I know I've experienced this on a very small scale. So I'm hoping that maybe you can explain this. Sometimes, like we're doing different sessions using rods or whatever. I am a sensitive, and I can feel things, and I can feel connections, and I do in meditation have a spirit guide that I connect with. And that often, even in investigations, I connect with this spirit guide. And sometimes I feel like I'm being given something more for proof. And I think you guys call that more, you're giving something for validation. So is that something that you as a psychic experience a lot when you're working with, where you get maybe, like tell them this, and I'm being this is a very crude way of saying it, but, tell the person this. So almost as a validation, almost as a proof of that connection. Is that something that you experience as a psychic, or?
You mean you tell them so that you can get validation?
No, I mean the spirit is telling you that almost as a validation point for the person you're giving the information to. I know for me, I don't do what you do, but I know when I have a connection with a spirit that we're communicating with, and we're getting those reactions, sometimes I get something that I feel is like this is being shown to me for a reason. So it's more of to validate that experience. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Christina, how am I trying? I think you know what I'm trying to say, because we've talked about this, and I think I'm missing the point here.
It's to help us relate to other people what we're experiencing, and to validate maybe the experience for them, not so much for us. I know several experiences like at Tipton Haynes. We've had things come through on rods or spirit box, whatever, that makes no sense to us, and we kind of look at each other, but then someone in the room.
Right.
So
yes, that's what I'm saying. Spirit is giving us that piece of information to validate the connection. That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you. Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I never thought of it that way. I know what you're saying, though. It's like, all right, you're reading for someone. Like one time, I was reading for this gentleman. His brother had gone missing, and I saw this grown man, and he was behind a tree, and he popped out, and he said, "Boo," and then he hid again. And I'm like, this is weird stuff, right? This is some weird stuff. So I thought, ooh, I could really offend this guy. So I kind of didn't tell him that. See what I'm saying? That's back when I used to doubt a little bit.
Gotcha.
So, now I would go ahead and say it. But my point is, later, I read in the paper, because they were, this man had been missing for weeks. So, and I never, ever look at or read before I go. I can't.
Sure.
I can't let my mind get connected. I have to leave the spirit. But later I read this article, and it said they called him Ghost, the man that disappeared, because he hid behind trees and jumped out at the areas, at the children in the neighborhood.
So that was the validation piece.
That's my point. So after that, I realized the validation, isn't for us. You're right. I say stuff now all the time, makes absolutely no sense to me, but time and time again, it makes
maybe that is
sense.
the message, right?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I don't see this validation for me, but rather the message is for them. So yes, so you just take the message and deliver the message. Yeah,
Very interesting.
There's times when you will see someone, I mean, really see them, like see stuff in their life, right? And then there's times that you're given nothing about this person except the message, which makes no sense to you. Mm-hmm.
Wow. And so getting back to the Cassandra effect. So
I'm glad I'm not the only one that sees rabbits running mad.
yeah, I don't know. I'm really flighty today. Today has been just, I'm really off today, but
My energy.
it's just sometimes I'm just that way, I guess. But getting back to the Cassandra effect a little bit. So sort of that is, I guess, putting that into modern day terms for you guys as a psychic, knowing that from working so closely with Rhonda, it's kind of a burden in a way, right? I mean, it sort of is. I mean, here you have this information, you have this gift, you have this ability, and sometimes no matter how hard, it's right, you've got that validation, but you just cannot get the person to hear the message that spirit has asked you to deliver. So that's almost a burden in a sense. I mean, I would imagine.
Well, I can tell you, people don't want to hear bad news. They just don't. And I understand it. I don't like to get bad news either. But back in January, I was reading the first story I had seen. It was about a new virus coming out of Wuhan, China. And they had like 500 people dead at the time. And I had a vision. When I say I have a vision, it's like, bam, I'm somewhere else. And I saw this huge fiery ball, and it was rolling, and it was consuming everything in front of it. And I started telling my friends and being very polite with my clients, informing them they needed to get ready for this. And so my own family was balking, and they kind of laughed at me, and ha ha ha, and you take things too seriously. It's one story, yada yada yada. And the good thing about it, though, is because I was incessant with them, they kept up with the stories. And so they still got well ahead of of most people on this. Now, you might say, well, Pat, why not go out, and tell everyone? Well, let me tell you something. If you can't get your own family
to believe you,
get
right?
on board,
Yeah.
and I always remember, from the Bible, the story of Amos, when poor old Amos was out there getting stones chucked at him because he was telling everybody bad times was coming. They didn't straighten up. No one wanted to hear him either. That's part of it.
That's human nature. It's human nature. We don't want to be sad. We don't want to be hurt. We don't want. Sometimes something is right obvious right in front of us. In our intuition and everything inside of us is telling us that this is the case, and we just refuse to see it. So I imagine now when you are trying to, and there's also the bad side of that too. And to see how I go, I got derailed for a second there, but it's the same thing with where I think that sometimes, unfortunately, psychics and mediums, you guys get a bad reputation, and that's why I think it's so important for teams and for people to involve the psychic side of this coin as much as possible to help validate that and bring that validation, because what you guys do is special, unique, and it's a fascinating gift, and it's something that I think needs to be embraced. And unfortunately, sometimes it's not, because just like we have people in the paranormal that go out and fake evidence and they do things that are just really, really shady, and it hurts the community, it hurts the field, it hurts the integrity. And then when you walk in and say, hey, I'm a paranormal researcher, people look at you like, oh, you're one of those kind of people. And I think the same thing happens even more so to you guys, because there are charlatans out there that do the wrong thing, and it gives you guys a bad reputation. And I hate to see that when people do that, because what you guys bring to the table is truly special, and I just wanted to point that out.
Well, and you're right. I tell you, there are a lot of charlatans, and I tell people, if you're going to go to a psychic, make sure you tell them nothing. Make sure that I'm not saying just go dead face and stare at them. That's ridiculous. What I'm saying is, a really good hot reader, who is somebody that, or cold reader rather, who will just look at you and say you've got really nice clothes on, you're wearing a big wedding ring, yada yada yada, right? You get a lot of information if that's what you're doing. All right. For instance, if you come in with a big wedding ring on, they're not going to tell you that you're going to find the love of your life, tall, dark, and handsome, if they're a charlatan. So you want, you'll know really, really quickly. Don't start talking about yourself. They're really good about trying to get you to start talking.
Those
Now,
questions that start giving little tidbits. Yeah,
yeah,
fishing.
what they do is they take that in. They don't do it right away. They'll wait 5, 10, 15 minutes. The sitter has forgotten what they've said. And now the cold reader looks like like they're legit.
Yeah.
There are a lot of really bad people. And I'll tell you something else. If anybody says they've got, you've got some sort of hex on you, and the only way that they can, have it taken off is give me $1,500 and I'll burn a candle for you.
Charlatan.
Run as fast as you can. Absolutely.
Yep.
Run.
Yes. I mean, in my world, there are such things as hexes and curses, but you don't pay some charlatan money for an imaginary curse. So save your money and report them. Oh, I got to tell you a funny story real quick.
Sure.
Talking about it. Okay, one day I was having a reading with a woman that evening, and I started seeing a police badge. I'm like, oh.
Uh-oh.
And, well, I mean, I don't know. You just get paranoid if all of a sudden you just see it flashing, police badges all over the place. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So I go to the door and I open the door. There's my sitter, and she's got a Virginia State Police K9 unit shirt on. And so I said, well, come in, And she sits down. She says, you don't remember me. And I have ADD. So I'm like, I don't remember. And she said, years ago at the Star Museum, you were doing public reading, and you told me that I would start out as a 911 operator, and then I would be hired as, in the police department. And she said, she had told me nothing what it is. She said, what is my career path? And I immediately heard 911, may I help you? And then, I'm given, it's called claircognizance, where you just know something. And I told her, I said, you're going to start out as a 911 operator, and you will be a police detective, and you will be a policeman. She had gotten hired as a 911 operator, and she had just recently gotten hired, that promotion into the police force. She wanted a reading, to tell me that, and also to connect with her father who had crossed over. So that's kind of a funny story.
Wow. Right. Well, Pat, there was a couple questions that did pop up that I didn't put up because I I did want to, I know people will start asking a bunch of questions because, that we've got a psychic on here and they do this sometimes when Rhonda's on there. And I should have said this earlier and I apologize. I'm a little flighty today. But if anybody did have a specific question, and it wasn't anything big, I'll make sure that you see the question and get it to you so that you contact this person. I don't want to put people doing live stuff on the show and like that where they're asking a question and then kind of putting you in a spot and them in a spot. They may have something personal there, or it may lead to something personal, and I just don't feel like that on YouTube or Facebook is really the platform to get into those things that might be personal. So if somebody has had questions for you or would like to get in touch with you because of your gifts and your abilities, would that be okay to send them your way and have, you can get in touch with them that way? Or what would be the best way? Is it Facebook? Is it through your website? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, they can get in touch with me on my website at pat-o'keefe.com, or they can catch me on Pat O'Keefe. Something.
Okay. I have the websites that you had sent me. They will be in the description on the Facebook one that will be posted up, which is already up, and it will also be in the YouTube description. So that information will be there. And throughout the first hour and 20 minutes of the show, I had those scrolling along the bottom, so people can go back to an earlier part of the show and get those informations. But I just wanted to point that out that there was a question that was asked. I didn't put it up because I feel like that's something that should be personal between the psychic and the client, and really doesn't need to be done on a live show, unless that's the point of the live show is for readings, and this one wasn't. So.
Well, and Matt, just a question, because I know you have, you've evolved also spiritually as you've followed this path. What was it? What were the milestones for you that, took you on a path into, wanting to know more?
Wow, my journey has been really crazy. The people that follow us know my journey, and I won't go real deep into it, but real quick, I was a skeptic before I had my first paranormal experience. Then I had this experience that changed my life. That experience led to a desire to research things. So I started out as your typical skeptic wanting answers. The answers became a passion. That passion became something huge in my life. A big part of my life was the paranormal. And I spent several years investigating and going out and doing what you see on the television shows to a degree and trying to make contact with EVPs and all the classic paranormal stuff. Then I went on an investigation at the Nickerson Sneed and I met a woman by the name of Rhonda. And really, that was a change for me. We connected, and like I said that before, I mean, she's like a sister to me. I love her to death. I think the world of her. And she just really showed me a different path, a different way. And when we started doing some experiments together, and I started seeing the value, because honestly, psychics were just like the paranormal was for me prior to that. It was like, okay, sure, you believe in that. I've never experienced it, whatever. I kind of looked at psychics the same way because I had never experienced a legitimate gifted person that had something to offer. And that connection and those experiments led to a whole different way of looking at not only the paranormal, but life, the universe, the greater good, the higher being, whatever you want to call it, the universal life force. That led to different things, and I personally evolved and opened up more. And the more I opened up, the better I was able to feel and experience things on paranormal investigations. I was able to connect with spirit differently. I would feel and sense things that I never did before. And then I took Reiki 1, and that opened me up even more to where I was able to even get more. The seances, feeling things and experiencing things. So that has happened, and that progression has continued for me, and it continues all the time. So every time we go out, every time we are in those worlds, I have more experiences. Every time I meditate, I see and feel different things that I never did before, and I'm continuing to grow on my path. So I would say that was a defining moment. And then when Christina came on board, connecting with Christina, and we started working together, and that just added a whole new dynamic. So the three of us kind of started working together on that side of the coin. Nikita, that energy, and it just really that energy changed. It changed me. It changed the dynamic of the team, and it just has really brought me personally in a different direction. I don't know if I think I answered your question, but yes, I am continuing to grow and evolve constantly. So out of
Well,
curiosity, what made you ask that question?
well, I just, I can tell that you love to research and read about things. You'd mentioned that a couple of times. So I was curious as to how you had, came down that path, so to speak, and started connecting, actually starting to, most readers have very open minds anyway, but it's like it became broader for you, your ability to accept concepts that aren't common in our day to day.
Very true.
But
Um,
but I will tell you, I'm taking a class you might be interested in. In
okay.
fact, Christine and Michelle also. It's through Harvard University, but they're in their edX program. So it's
Okay.
Harvard edX, and it's on divination, oracles, and probability, something like that. Then they got to make it fancy. It's basically about divination, and you can take the class for free. It's a week class. It takes about a week because I have ADD, so I wander off and come back. You could probably do it in a couple of days. But anyway, but you can. This is the really cool part. And I know you'll like this, Matt. For $25, you can get the certificate for
Ah,
you at
see, I love certificates.
Harvard EX or edX. You can't beat that. I know
Absolutely.
Harvard. That's the only reason I got Harvard.
Yeah, I mean, that's something cool to say, right? No, no, thank you. That sounds like something
Yeah.
I would definitely be interested in.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting. It talks about the history of the different forms of divination. So, Christine, Michelle, you'd probably be interested in that also. Yeah. Michelle, I got to ask, what changed you?
I'm just actually starting on my spiritual journey. I've been very closed off, so I'm just starting to open up. So I've been here listening to everything. I've learned a lot tonight.
She is opening up a lot more, though. I will say this: in the year that she's been with us, she's gone from this. Honestly, when we first brought her on, the story with that is we had a public investigation, and she came to several of our public investigations, but she just seemed really curious and really interested in the paranormal. So it was just one of those things. I know myself and Al and Cameron were like, I don't know. We feel like we need to offer her an opportunity if she's interested. So we decided to ask her to come out with us some and see if she was interested. And she did, and she was a good fit. And she just seemed like we needed to, I don't know, I hate to use that term, but like we needed to mentor her is what it felt like. Like we needed to bring her on board. And in this year, though, yes. And when she first came on, though, the first couple of times, as good as she was doing, she was so quiet. I told Al, I said, man, I don't think she likes me. I think she just absolutely hates me. I don't know what I've done to this woman, but she doesn't like me. And she's just quiet. She's just a real quiet person.
I'm very observant. I observe things,
But she's a scientist, literally, and that's why I think that part of that's your scientific mind too.
Yeah.
But she has evolved so much. Now she's experiencing things, and I see it. Like we'll be in an investigation, and I'll look over, and I'll see it. I'll know that she's having an experience. She ain't saying nothing, but it's happening. So it's really cool to see how she's grown too.
And what about you, Christina?
Pat, my journey started a long time ago. I had actually stepped away from paranormal for many, many years. And I get a 10 o'clock at night one night, Al sends me a text out of the blue. Do you believe in ghosts? And a few months later, here I am, with the team hanging out and just jumping right back into the pool. I needed to step away for a while, though. I really did. I needed to refocus and reset. And
sometimes distance gives you clarity.
I needed to find my path, my true path. And so it was perfect timing.
And I would tell you, often our paths were better to walk them by ourselves for a while. You know what I'm saying? Not that I'm not talking about the group here. I'm talking about the spiritual end of it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's good to have it's good to have a nice tight group, for support and for that energy. But the decisions we make on our spiritual path, have to be our own too. So, yeah.
And that's what I'm really excited about. I mean, this team has changed so much since I founded it back in '07. I mean, we have a totally different dynamic than we did even then. I mean, the people are even different. And that's what I love about it, though. There's so much diversity. There's different belief systems, there's different methodologies. Everybody's at different phases of their path, and that's okay. And that's what we love because that's what makes it unique, and that's what brings different elements in. And sometimes Christina is operating at a level that I don't see, or that Rhonda's over here, and Michelle comes in with something, and or Al sees something, or Kevin, and it just brings all those parts to the table. And I say this all the time, and I truly, from the bottom of my heart, mean this. It is an honor and a privilege for me to get to work with these people and to have these people with me on this journey, to share this experience with me. And this is my para family, and I love all of them. And I wouldn't be with anybody else doing what we do. I couldn't imagine being with anybody else than the group I have with me on this journey.
We love you, Matt. Don't we?
Yeah, we do.
And we met people like Pat. I mean, that's amazing. We got to meet people like you and build those relationships, and it's just an incredible experience all the way around.
Well, I can tell that you guys have a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and that's a beautiful thing. It really is. I gotta ask, Matt, do you remember any of your past lives when you when you think? Let me ask: are there any particular like old movies from
Yes,
specific areas?
I am very tied to the Civil War
Yeah.
and that period of time. That is my favorite period of time in history. I'm very connected to that, and it's a very visceral connection. It's not like I just, oh, that's cool. I mean, I like the beach too, but it's a different like. For me, the connection I have with the Civil War era stuff, I'm a relic hunter. I like to go out and collect Civil War artifacts, not on battlefields, but on, long-term camps, private property farms. Those are not just pieces of trinkets for me. There's a direct connection to them. When I hold it, I feel it. When I stand on or go to a battlefield, I feel it. It's a connection. It's a spiritual connection. I don't know how to explain that other than it is a very important part of me when I go to those places. I feel it on a level that's very visceral.
Well, I will tell you that there's a man, I wish I could remember his name. I'll look it up and send it to you so you can find out more. But he actually said that he was from a specific era. I mean, it was like Greek level era, way back when. And that he remembered a city. And I mean, he describes the city. So 2 researchers actually took him to the site. He
Oh, wow.
wasn't running around telling the researchers where things were, like, where the temple was, yada, yada, yada. Wait, it gets better. Then he even pointed to the ground and said, this is where so-and-so used to stand, and this is where so-and-so used to stand. So they made great discoveries for this man, from this man's information. I mean, this is recorded, on record. And
didn't they work with an archaeologist on that too?
Well, that's the 2 researchers, yes. Yeah, they were archaeologists. They took him to the site, and they recorded everything he said, and everything was on point. And he was not a particularly educated man. He was just a Joe guy that had lived during that era. And it's really interesting because he actually pointed to where a guard tower would have been, and he said, that's where I died. He had a spear. He remembered a spear coming at him. A spear killed him. He said, that's where I died. I mean, yes. So, this is very real. When people have these sorts of connections, there's a reason for them. And then also, there is, what was there? Oman Set. It's one of the most famous cases. I have ADD, and so I have real issues. But this one, really fast on setting. And absolutely fascinating. She was born with I think a British or an American name, but she changed it to Seti, and she married an Egyptian. She said she lived during ancient Egypt, married an Egyptian, went to Egypt, became like, a professor at some museum, and actually went to sites and helped them uncover great discoveries
Oh,
just like
wow.
that man did. Is that amazing? I'll
That's
send you
very
that.
amazing.
So you can read
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah, and see, that's to me, that's more validation, right? I mean, and that's a big part of what so I think our journey is validation, and that's why we work on all sides of this. We use the conventional stuff with the psychics, with those different tools to cross validate those things, to bring truth and seek the truth in those things and validate them. So when you talk about it, what you're talking about right there, I love stuff like that because it validates the things that we all know is true, but we try to convince the rest of the world and they look at us like, yeah, okay, sure. But I think that's really cool that stories like that when you can validate those things.
Those are two particularly well-known ones. I mean, Christina had already read about that gentleman, and it's
I
really
actually saw an interview. There's an interview somewhere. I can't even remember the name of the show that it was on, but they filmed him when they took him to the site. So that's really wild.
Fascinating. That's really cool. Well, Pat, when
It
all
is.
this COVID stuff is over, I'm personally going to try and reach out to you. I would love to do a regression. I would really like to see how far we can go back and see what we can find out about my past lives, because I have no doubt that I've had those experiences, and I would love to connect with them if I can.
I will tell you that the Civil War is not is not totally stopped. That's for sure. I mean, I'm definitely seeing another era connected with you. May I ask, Christina, when you came out of hypnosis, how did you feel? What did it, what kind of connections did you make with your past life? Did you feel relief? Did you feel happy? What were you feeling?
It was a multitude of emotions. There was joy, there was great pain and sadness. Some of the grief and we've talked about this. I watched people I love die, and then the moment I felt it over again, where I went to the shore side and waited for the waves to come and take me, experiencing all of that again. It was overwhelming, but healing at the same time. A level of understanding that I'd not had before about why I feel the way I do about certain things. Physically, I was exhausted. I was exhilarated, but exhausted. I just wanted to go home and go to bed, but I wanted to write it all down so I didn't forget anything. And of course, I haven't. It's kind of like, you hear about a movie or remember a movie that you watched as a kid, and you remember bits and pieces, but then you watch it again and you can bring it all back together. That's what it was like for me. I could bring the movie back together and it all flows. But it brought with it, strangely, and I didn't expect this, the emotions from then with
So,
people came back with me now.
so is it almost like reliving it again? Is it in a sense like re-experiencing it again?
It was for me. It was
Wow,
for me.
that's powerful.
Yeah. I mean, and I've shared, we've been connected before, and you and Rhonda and I lived in the same household, and I helped take care of you guys, and I watched you die, and
Wow.
that was tough. So yeah, there's times when I do crazy stuff, just blow it off. It's because of that.
And see, that goes back to, again, what we were talking about earlier with groups of souls. That's even more validation. And we've talked about this a lot privately as a team. And I'm one of these people, and Pat, I don't know how you feel about this, but I don't believe in coincidences. I believe everything happens for a reason. There is a purpose in everything. Some of it is choice. Some of it is where we end up. We end up because of a series of choices. We end up where we are for a specific reason. I don't believe in coincidences. I just don't. There's too many factors when you look at it all and you put it all together. One little tiny thing doesn't happen, and this whole thing doesn't exist. Then it happened for a reason, because there's a million things that could have kept that one tiny thing. It could have allowed that one tiny thing to happen that would stop all of it. So we've talked about that a lot as a team. And I know me personally, like I said, I don't believe in coincidences. Pat, thoughts on that? Coincidences, a real thing or not so much?
Our ancestors believed in signs and omens and that God talked to us all the time. And talking about technology, it's so constant. It's like there are energies, negative energies that we call the whisperers, because they come and they whisper negative thoughts into your ear, that you're bad, or that you'll never win, or and I see some of this technology almost like that, not in that it's telling us
Yes.
how bad we are, but rather it keeps us occupied. So the whispering of that prevents us from hearing the small,
It's a
quiet voice
continuous
of the Lord.
distraction.
Yes. And so our ancestors would go, and a feather from a bird would float to the ground, and it would
It's a
have
gift.
great meaning. I mean,
Hmm.
wow, it's a message from the gods. You know what we do? We don't even see it because we got our cell phone right there, and probably
Yeah.
stomped right across that message from God.
I don't know what
So
you're talking about.
I'm like you. I think that God talks to us, divine energy. We just have to listen. I'm sorry, Christina.
No,
Christina was
I
up
was just,
playing on her phone. She was being funny.
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
She was being funny. But you're right. I mean, and it's a
I love
constant
her.
distraction. It's a constant
Yeah,
distraction, and
it's a
and that's why I
constant
said
distraction.
earlier too, kind of a double-edged sword in a way. I mean, it's great that we have access to knowledge that we didn't before, but it's also an ability to dumb us down because we get distracted so easily. It's like it's important things are happening in life, and we turn to escape instead of embracing those things and working through those challenges, which ultimately elevates us as individuals.
Matt, just to bring us all back down to earth, the estimated IQ of an American is 98.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right? And so we've got more access to information than we've ever had before. I mean, it's instantaneous, but we have less critical thinking. It's like,
Yes.
okay, I'm not going to take the time because, why do it? I'm not going to take the time to go
Yeah.
out like you do and do my research and do 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 different articles of 15 different sources, both for and against, and then use my own critical
Critical
judgment,
thinking. Yes.
right, and come up with the outcome. Now it's like, okay, boing, Google, and if I lean to the left, I shall go to CNN and I shall be delivered. Or if I lean to the right, I shall go to Fox, and there it is, all
Yeah.
the answers. And now I will take my sign without a
Yep.
mask, and I will go to the courthouse and demand my freedom.
Yes.
You know
Because
what
we're
I'm
all
saying?
puppets. We're all puppets on a string.
I mean, I hate to say it, but here's the saddest part. We're puppets in a box of our own making, or with
Yes.
strings of our own making. We can
Yes.
release ourselves from that anytime simply by thinking for ourselves. And you guys are free thinkers. I mean, you guys are like the choir, right? But you know what I'm talking about. There are
Yep.
those who there are those who have to put something as great and magnificent and wonderful as divine energy and put it into a box and say, okay, my church has prophets, but if you're a psychic, that's the devil. The
Yep.
devil's telling me.
Or God forbid you bust out a Ouija board.
That's what I'm saying. Instead of saying that, the divine is so great that none of us, with our very small, I don't care if we have 150 IQ, our small little minds, we're not going to wrap around it. Just let it flow. Just love everyone. And if they want to be, closer to divine energy by being what was it, the flying spaghetti church, let them go. It's their flying spaghetti.
That's true. That's
Let us
true.
not judge them.
But it's true. I mean, it's
It
very
is,
true.
it is.
And you raise a really interesting point. It's something that we talk about a lot in my household personally is we have this desire for two things. One is confirmation bias. We really love to look for things as a society that make us feel that we're right. social media is the best advocate for this, right? I can say whatever I want on my social media platform without fear of reprisal because that's just the way it is. And then there'll be 50 people that will come along that just because I said what they wanted to hear, now suddenly we're all internet experts, and that's that confirmation bias. I can find 50 people that think exactly like me, but what I'm really looking for is 50 people that don't think like me. Because for me, I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room. If I'm the smartest guy in the room, I'm in the wrong damn room. I need to move on to the next room because I can't learn anything if I'm the smartest guy in the room. So you raise a good point, and I think that confirmation bias and self-ignorance are two things that are running rampant in society by and large.
Well,
It's sad, but it's true.
I had a learned man tell me once, and I hope I recreate his quote, but he said that you will never convince people of the truth when they've already made their decision based on emotion. And that is so
Wow.
true. That is so true. So I'm seeing so much of an intolerance for little things, and also being able to hide behind our keyboards, has made
Yes.
some really nasty people out there. And I will tell you, I found myself getting that way once. I actually went back and apologized, because at the moment it's like, oh, how dare they? I mean, they just offended me. They just said something against me. Well, they can have their opinion. And
That's
if
right.
I don't like it, there's a delete button, or I can choose to ignore them. That's what I'm saying. We make our own prison. We make our own
Yes.
puppet strings
I wish
that.
people would treat social media like they do the TV. If I'm watching TV and I don't like the show that comes on, you know what I do?
Change
I
it.
change the channel and I just go on with my life. I don't write the network and tell them why they're fundamentally flawed for even putting this show on television. I don't do that. So I try not to do it in social media. If I see a post that I don't like, you know what I do? I scroll right past it because I don't need to waste my time trying to convince somebody of something that I can't convince them of, and I'm not going to
Right.
share their view. And the other thing that I think that's really wrong, and I try to instill this in my daughter, when we talk to people, like even this, in a sense, this is not the same as sitting down for a conversation, but it's a
Right.
whole lot closer than hiding behind a keyboard. Because right now I can see your faces, and if I say something that affects you, I'm going to see that. And that's something we were losing in society is that face-to-face communication. And that's the difference because I'm not going to say something to you if I'm a decent person. If I see I'm saying something to you and it is offending or hurting you, I should stop saying it if I'm a decent person. And if I've hurt you, I probably ought to apologize if I truly mean that, unless I'm a sociopath, and then that's a whole another topic of discussion. But my point is that's something that we don't do when we hide behind keyboards because we can say whatever we want to say without that fear of reprisal. And it's a scary, scary thing.
Well, it's a scary thing, and we forget that we're causing karma, not for the person that we're attacking, but for ourselves. It's something we always have to remember. If we say words that cut another human being, then those words will come back to us in some form, sometime, and
Karma
that is
exchange is a very real thing.
it really is. But it's a different world. It is 1984. It is a brave new world. I mean,
Wow.
put it all
I've had that
together.
discussion too. That it is as 1984 is exactly right.
That's right. And think about, recent movies about, because it's culture, right? Recent movies about robots and how we treat them, that we treat the you know that we will treat them poorly even when they have advanced intelligence.
Yes.
Once they get to the point where they can start doing the critical thinking and putting things together, there is no way that our puny little human minds, are going to be able to keep up with that. And so we need to be very careful in what we produce and when we produce it, and which is just, I mean, we could write another book about that. It's probably time for another one of those anyway.
Absolutely. Well, Pat, it has been wonderful having you on here. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. I think we have covered a wide range of topics tonight. And again, I apologize for being a little flighty tonight. I tried to stay focused, but I'm a little off today, but I apologize for that. But it was great. I really enjoyed it. I certainly hope that you will come on with us again in the future so we can, there's a million other topics I know we could get into that would be equally as fascinating to discuss. Another thing I forgot to mention about you is you are also an author. You have wrote several books, have you not?
Oh, I have a shameless plug if I can find it. Yes. You can find one of them on Amazon if you're interested. The last one, full-length one I did was The Ghost of St. Albans Sanatorium, which is it's a compendium of paranormal investigators' experiences. In fact, if I do another one, I'll need to get you all in it. And then
We would
I
love that.
love my last lifetime was in the late Victorian era, and so I love Edgar Allan Poe, the Dark Romanticists. And so this is a book of poetry that's actually an homage to Edgar Allan Poe and the other Dark Romanticists and the ones that came before them, who were the graveyard, what they called the graveyard poets. So anyway, it's a book of poetry. I actually had this woman, I was at a conference, and she said, "What's this book about?" I said, "Oh, it's a book of poetry." And she said, "Oh," and went Thomas. I'm like, "Oh, I will no longer speak to you." So anyway, yeah, I can be found on Amazon and other places.
Well, Pat, it's an honor to call you a friend, and you are a wonderful person, and you will have many, many talents, as we keep mentioning, and I keep forgetting things and then remember things that I know I should have probably mentioned about you, but you are truly a remarkable person, and it's an honor to call you our friend. And I look forward to when we get past all this COVID stuff. I hope that we can work together some, and I can't wait to have, I mean, we can't wait to have you at the Hexpo. I know we're excited to have you as one of our special guests there. Once we got a big announcement coming about that. Unfortunately, COVID is going to force some changes in our schedule, but it is what it is, and we will rise past this, and it will be better because of it. We're gonna think positive and operate on that higher frequency. But Pat, again, it's been truly wonderful having you on tonight. Is there anything else you'd like to add before I shoot the outro? And then if you'll stick around, we'll say goodbye once we go off the air.
Just it's an honor to call you all friends. Matt, you're amazing. You're a fellow researcher and writer. You have that vibe to you. And honestly, check out Harvard edX. I mean, it's an amazing opportunity. I mean, where else can you say, yes, I have a certificate in divination from Harvard University.
This is true.
That and Michelle, both of you. I mean, it's just amazing. It's a short course, but it's such a pleasure to have you all in my life and in this lifetime.
Absolutely. And thank you for everything that you continue to give to us. We greatly appreciate it. Guys, I'm going to shoot this outro real quick, and then if you'll stick around, Pat, once we go off there, we'll say goodbye to you real quick, because I want to make sure I got a couple of things I wrote down as far as contacts for you correct while I've got you. But everybody, thank you for tuning in tonight. It has been a great conversation as always. Next week, we have got Josh Bender on, the inventor and creator of Deadlights. Those are the exclusive lights that we use as a paranormal team. So make sure you tune in next week to see what Josh has to say. Thank you all for being with us here tonight. Pat, thanks once again for being here with us.